Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Tonight we're going to look at best practices for Kubernetes clusters, and this is because I was inspired by DigitalOcean. They actually have a very cool web page that actually shows how you should actually set up your cluster to be compliant with best practices. And there's actually also, you can actually install a cron job called named Kubernetes Lint, and then you will actually get all of these errors sent to you once daily actually. So you can set them up to run as often as you want to. But there are some there are actually a lot of good rules that I sometimes actually do not follow, and one of them is to always put a namespace. In your Kubernetes resources. So whenever you define a resource, this can be, for instance, it can be in a pod like here. It can also be in a deployment or in a stateful set. Then you should always add the namespace. Of course, it can also be a config map. It can be any of the resources, also a secret, of course, etc., etc., etc. Always add the namespace right there. Sometimes, then maybe you think that, okay, it's because I want this to be dynamic, so I want my pod to be installed maybe in multiple namespaces, so that's why I don't want to mention the namespace right here. But that is where you use Helm. You use the Helm templating, tool to actually, to make a variable right here, and then you can run your Helm chart on different namespaces with different variable values right here. So that's why I use Helm. Always add a namespace. I have actually gone through my old charts, and I've added namespace where I forgot to add namespace inside my resource YAML files. So then we have the latest tag. This is more Docker related actually, but this is because a lot of people, they actually just say, I want to use latest and greatest, or I don't know about a lot of people, but some, and actually also myself, I actually had a Minecraft server. I actually still have that latest tag on that one because I wanted it to automatically be updated whenever the new version comes, and I just want to say restart to my stateful Minecraft set, and then I want to have the latest and greatest Minecraft server running inside my cluster. So I've actually left the latest be, and then with a pull policy of always. But you should not do it unless you have a really good reason, like I just had that right there. I want it to be easy for me to update Minecraft because it comes very often. Of course, I could also, what they actually say right here is best practice is that actually, of course, we should go and type in the right version. And when a new Minecraft version then comes, then instead of just restarting my stateful set, then I should go in and then I should change my stateful set so it have the right version of the Docker image instead. So here we have an example right here. Here we have the Redis database. This is latest and greatest Redis that we want to use, and I'll just zoom in a little bit more so it's easier to read. And then the fix is to mention the name with the version, or maybe even by the SHA number right here. So the tag ID right there. So either use version, to use version and not latest. That is one error also right there. Then we have cron job concurrency. And this means that sometimes when we define our cron jobs, I don't know if you know about a cron job, but a cron job is actually a special type of resource, kind of like a deployment. It is something that runs once in a while, so we can actually set up cron jobs. So instead of if you have a problem where you have to solve it with something that runs maybe once per day or maybe once per hour, do not try to make this yourself by setting up a cron job Linux server, for instance, inside a deployment or inside a stateful set. Use the cron job instead. That is why it's there. It can run something. Of course, also inside a Docker container. Actually, it can run something once in a while. But here we have to be careful with the concurrency policy of allow. That means that then we can actually have multiple cron jobs running at the same time, and this can give race conditions, and that is best practice. So this is not recommended. Concurrency policy allow. No, we should not do that. We should have replace instead. So This means that if we try to run it once again, that means if one job for some reason has not been done, then then the replace argument will actually wait and replace. You can also choose forbid, then it just doesn't do anything if a job has not finished while the next job is being triggered. So that's up to you. Forbid or replace. Privileged containers. You should not have some containers that can actually access the hosts of the whole cluster. That is not good. So you should never run in privileged context like this, because this would just this makes your whole cluster setup insecure, and you could the highest probability is that you could actually do something that will actually ruin your cluster. And of course, it's also security wise it's not that good, because then someone can actually take over the whole cluster, the whole cluster node actually. The nodes can actually be taken over with this setting right here. So instead, try to give only the capabilities that is needed for the pods. That is the solution right here. Run as non-root. You should try not to run as root. If containers blah blah allowed to run with process ID 0, then the host can be subjected to malicious activity, and we do not want to do that. So how to solve it? Here we have an example right here. We have a container. Then we have the fix right here. Security context run as non-root true. So this means that we cannot run as root. And this does not mean inside the container. This means we recommend to use. This means if you see that it has a process ID of 0, then it actually runs as root. But if it has another ID, even though it's called root inside the container, then it is still non-root, to be considered non-root. Then we have the fully qualified image. Right here, Docker is one of yes. That's usually Docker we use, and here we have it. We have here we do not have the fully qualified image name. We only have the last part of the name. That is not good, because we cannot see which registry. We need to specify which registry it comes from, because of course usually we would actually have a setup where we look up in our own registry first, and then after that, then we will go out and look out at the Docker Hub, for instance. But always mention the first part also, so it's a fully qualified image that is being used, and that means that then the Kubernetes and Docker knows where to fetch the image from. Node name selector. What is wrong here? Not recommended. Using a raw digital ocean resource in the node selector. The selector here. Okay, so this is why this is the. This is here we actually. This is the name of a pool. This is the name of the Kubernetes pool. And this is not how we select our nodes, of course. The way we choose it, the way we choose on the nodes is actually to add a piece of metadata, and then we use the metadata instead. And let us see how they actually fix it. They have use the docs specific nodes pool label. Okay, they actually just use this instead, but they're still selecting the pool host name actually right there. But usually we should never choose the pool at all. We should never do anything with the pool. That is just something that we should not think about when we are deploying stateful sets and also deployments in the Kubernetes cluster. Then we have a webhook right here. Admission control webhooks can destroy normal cluster operations. Okay. Doesn't exist. It's in a namespace that does not exist. I've never tried this actually. So configure webhook. I've actually never configured a webhook myself. I do have a webhook, because if you install the default certificate manager, it will actually also install a webhook which takes any replies from it can, for instance, it can take from, I think it's from Let's Encrypt. It can take some messages from them, and then I'm actually not positive about the webhooks, what it's used for regarding the certificates. But the webhooks, of course, are used, so other applications and other systems can actually call back into your cluster, and they do not have to do that on an HTTP or the HTTPS ports. Usually, if you have a REST API, of course, you just use your regular, use a regular web application, and you just set up your ingress rules. So you use HTTPS, the HTTPS protocol for that. Then we have, yes, what is that? There's also something I actually don't understand, so I'll just continue. Continue regarding this admission. Again, admission control. That is not something that I've looked that much into. Dubspot, oh no, that's DigitalOcean. Not recommended. Parts that refer to Dubs volumes should be owned by. Yeah, okay, this is a good one. Yeah, this is a very good one, and I actually have changed many of my charts. If you have a deployment that uses a volume, then it's not a deployment. Then it is a stateful set because it has state, right? It uses it has volume, so therefore it by definition has states. So whenever you see that you have a deployment, and you can also see that you're also creating some volume mounts, then at the same time that you see the first volume mount, go change your whole YAML file to a stateful set. So instead of having a deployment right here, right now it's a pod that we are looking at, then it should be a stateful set. Look, they are changing it to a stateful set. It's very beautiful. It's a little bit longer, yes it is, but it is the right way to do it. And you can see here we request 1 GB, and we give that is the storage class name. So this is almost the same always, except for the storage, of course, that depends on your purpose. And then you have a name right here, all data. And then you can mount your all data to a mount path right here. Yeah. So this means that we have a mount to a mount path right here. You should not mix. If you have different mount paths, then you should not use the same volume mount, even though that there's actually storage left. Then you should actually create a new storage. So you should not let them share the same volume. Because then suddenly you will have some files that have the same names, and then you will all write your own files. So that is yeah. So yeah, one volume mount per folder. So do not use one volume mount or one persistent volume per many folders. That's not to recommend. So then we have a pod state right here. What is this? This checks for unhealthy pods. Yes. Of course, we should use that. Host path volume. Let me just check right here. Not recommended using a host path. Yes. What is happening right here? This is probably someone that saw a cool Docker image on Docker Hub, and then now they want to spin it up inside the Kubernetes cluster. And then instead of creating a persistent volume, then the person actually creating this is just using the nodes. Actually, he is actually mounting this folder right here, the test PD inside this Nginx image right here, to the data path on the node itself. That's a big no-go. Yeah, no, do not do that. And it's also a pod right here. Of course, it should also be changed to a stateful set. So change it to a stateful set and give it a name. Here we have a volume right here. Here it has a name right here. It comes from a secret file. This volume is defined from that secret file right there. This is a little bit weird, actually. I must again admit I've never seen this. I would actually just I would expect to see something like we just saw before, where we just had the name and the storage and the claim, and then I would not have a pod like this. I would have a stateful set. Unused persistent volume. This check reports all the persistence volume. Yes, that is because when we have been goofing around inside the cluster, and we have created a lot of definitions, and suddenly then we change the persistence volume claim name or something like that, and then we get a new persistence volume claim, and then it means that we forget to clean up the old ones. So when we get one of these warnings from our cluster, if we use that cron job Kubernetes lints, if you use that job, then we could get a message like this: unused persistent volume, and then this means that there's a volume that is not connected or attached to any folder anywhere, or it's not used. So it's not used. So that's yeah. And how to fix it? Yes, we can just delete that persistent volume because it's not used by anyone. So unused config maps. That is also a message that we can get. And again, how to fix it? We just delete the config map because it's not used, right? So sometimes if you want to, and if you have created a new config map and maybe you want to keep the old configuration for some reason, then just download it. Just get it locally, and you can just get it with the kubectl, and then you can say get, and then the config map, and then -o for output, and then you can choose YAML. So then you can actually get all of this. Then you can get your config map that you might want to use in the future, might not. Then you can leave it inside your workspace instead of having it on the cluster. Always clean up after yourself, because suddenly another developer comes in and can actually see all of this mess. And then, of course, first of all, you lose credibility. And the second thing is that this other developer actually might, when there's something that doesn't work, then he or she might be tempted to actually go back and use the old config map, because it could be that someone made a mistake in the new config map. That is a thought you can get if it's very late and you have to fix something that doesn't work, and you are the one that they call because you are on the dialing list that day. So always clean up. Only leave the things that need to be used. Cleaning up is a good thing also inside your Kubernetes cluster. Unused secret, the same story about that. I don't want to repeat myself there, but it's, delete it. Clean up, clean up, clean up. Do not have unused resources in general. And this is not, of course, this is not only with secrets and unused config maps. If you have an unused application, then of course you should also remove that, right? If you're not using your WordPress application or whatever in Nginx, then remove that. And in general, you should not install Nginx, because usually you would have an Ingress Nginx controller that then would route the traffic to the correct web application that you have set up. So I think this is a bad example. This should have used another image. I don't like this Docker. I don't like this Nginx right here. Of course, if we could see the rest of the definition, maybe they're just adding a couple of HTML pages right there. Then it's okay to, of course, to use that image right there. Bare pods, not recommended. Bare pod without any deployment parameters. What should we do instead? We should have a deployment. So in all of those examples, and there are a ton of them out on the internet. If you search for something, then someone will say, just do this, just apply this to your Kubernetes cluster, and then there's a lot of times it's actually just a pod. That is bad practice. Do not do that. Do not do that. Use a deployment instead. And if it has a state, if it has a volume mapping, use a stateful set instead. So that cannot be set to enough. And again, it is quite easy. You can see it's just a little bit more YAML. Here we have the pod that is right here. We have a namespace, of course, where it needs to be put in a label, some labels that can be put on. That's just metadata. And again, here we have the label again right here. Then we have specification. And again, that was the same specification. Now the difference right here is that you have to choose how many replicas, how many versions of your application do you want to be running. And this is also a huge plus with using a deployment instead of using a pod. You can scale your applications up and down. And this is exactly one of the huge benefits with Kubernetes. This also means that you can actually deploy your application without anyone actually noticing it, because when you deploy a new application, first it will spin up a new version of your application, and then it will take down the old version. If your new version returns a 200 to the health check, and then everybody's happy, and no one actually noticed that you just deployed something in within normal hours. So that is a cool thing about Kubernetes, right? Use the benefits and do not be lazy regarding those pod definitions right there. Images from GitHub. That's something where we can actually pull images from. And again, I think that set up your own registry. It's okay that you have the Docker. We have the Docker Hub where we have the official the official images. But if you want to have a special version of something that you want to use, then do not use those weird. Of course, this is not weird when it comes from GitHub. It's not weird. I know that, but you do not use third-party repositories, the image repositories. Then, if I had to use that image, then I would actually pull it to my local machine, and then I will actually push it to my own registry. So then in my own registry, then I would actually have that image instead. So that's usually how I handle those situations. And yes, of course, it costs a bit more when you are when you're taking up when you're spending space. When you're taking up space in your registry, and of course it's cheaper if you did not use any space at all, but I just think it's much easier that I only have 2 places to debug from. I know that either my image comes from my own registry or it comes from the Docker hub registry. I like to have it. I like to keep it simple, so then I know there's only 2 places to look for those images if there's any error that I need to debug at any point in time. Then you have this beta should be v1. Yeah, okay. This is because all of these resources in Kubernetes this depends actually on the resources. If you don't know it, if you didn't know it, you probably know. But if you didn't know it, then you can actually install custom resources to your cluster, and actually many of your resources are actually custom, like the certificate manager. It has some orders, it has some challenges, and all of those are custom resource definitions. And those custom resource definitions, if they are not, as a lot of times actually, they're not done developing them actually. So that means that then they will actually have versions like this, version 1, beta 1. But then at some point, of course, then they are done developing this custom resource definition, and then they're renaming it to version 1. And of course, then you should also upgrade your resource to version 1. You should not use the beta versions. That's just what it says right there. So that's actually it. I just wanted to talk about best practices for Kubernetes cluster. As you can hear right here, there's a lot of things that can, when you know these rules, then you would have a much cleaner cluster, and it would be much easier for you to debug and to look into what's actually going wrong. Most cloud providers, they have a web version, they have a web view where you can actually look into all of your resources in your Kubernetes cluster. I would definitely recommend you to use K9s cluster. K9s cluster. This is a very cool. It's an awesome client, and it can be started up from the terminal, and it looks something like this, as you can see right here. So if you don't have that, definitely download that right away. Use it. It's free, and it's just so easy to restart stateful sets, to attach a shell to a running pod, so you can see what's actually going on. To delete resources, it's very easy to tail the log on pods. K9s, definitely, this is a must-have in your toolbox. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great evening, and feel free as usual to place questions and comments in the description. To place some comments. Thank you very much. Bye bye.